Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning into the Anyone Now podcast. I'm your host, John, and today it's just me, but we're going to go over a couple things of what you can expect in our next couple podcasts. This Friday, I have something set up with Dom. He was on, I think, 2 weeks ago at this point. So we're just going to be happy to have him back, and we're going to talk about some very deep stuff that he's definitely qualified to speak about, so very excited for that. Otherwise, I was trying to get in touch with some people to see if they had anybody they knew that had experience with aliens. More recently, there was a hearing. Again, there's information that's a little bit up in the air, we'll say. I mean, there's no concrete evidence quite yet of there being aliens. There's just a lot of people that work in the government or that, worked in the military and said, I signed documents that said I can't talk about the stuff I saw. And it's like, oh, okay, so what'd you see, Here's the thing. I personally, we can all agree with this, that the assumption that aliens exist is probably more of a belief. Like a lot of people say, I believe in aliens, or I think aliens exist. I believe aliens exist, or there's something out there. They're not quite sure. Whatever. It starts to go down the rabbit hole of the conventional or traditional view from religion, how people that are guided through their faith and how they kind of surmise the world to be based on their preference or their whatever their sect of religion is. It's going to give them a different, say, maybe idea about if there's aliens or not based on more concrete evidence. So that's why I say we still need more substance to say for certain, if we can even say for certain on anything, if aliens exist or not, or at the very least, if the United States government has had contact with, extraterrestrial life forms. I hope to have a very educated discussion about this. There's a lot of information that I'm excited to bring to the table, but also myself, I would love, I'm not sure if making this video is going to help, but I would love to make contact if there, I believe, or I accept the truth, the possible truth, or the objective, or, the objective truth that aliens most likely exist, or intelligent beings from other planets, right? Because the definitions shift around so often. You can say one thing's one thing and it's not the other. We don't even say, I say we. Colloquially known as UAPs is more universal than UFOs. Unidentified flying object is UFO. Unidentified aerial phenomenon is a UAP. So it's okay, it's interesting. There's a couple documentaries that I got to watch a while ago, a couple years now. And wow, did they open my eyes. And I have some personal experience as well. So I guess we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the aliens. I still do have some information to bring to you guys that I think is going to be pretty juicy. I have some firsthand accounts for myself. I have some things that I can say from a time when I went to Arizona back in 2020. I did have a ambition within myself to say I wanted to find some people that were abducted by aliens or had any experience with the extraterrestrial. Unfortunately, a lot of people that I got to speak to were younger, or they weren't always from Arizona. So I was like, okay, but there was my one friend's neighbor. His name was, it doesn't really matter. His name is Rob or Ron, one of those. I think it was Ron. And he was telling me about the Phoenix Lights. And I actually asked one more person about that who was also living with him, but kind of not. It was an interesting situation, but it was this older woman. I think Ron was 60. So this girl was probably around that same age. And basically, they both said a very comparable story to how, what they were told or what they saw with their own eyes about the Phoenix Lights, which I thought was very interesting that they had a consistent story. But it's not like they were all talking about it all the time. The circumstance was Ron. I'm pretty sure it was Ron. If you're watching, Ron from Arizona, I'm terribly sorry if I'm mixing your name up. We did have some good conversations, you and I. I thought it was pretty cool. And you're a nice guy as well, so. But I'm pretty sure it's Ron, because there's another Ron that I knew. But they obviously didn't have a contact with each other about this specific circumstance or this question that I had for them. So it's not that they were going to plan and then come up with something and be like, oh, John, yeah, by the way, So in my mind, these stories are very similar, which it's going to be difficult to kind of give an exact rendition of how everything went because, this is a while ago. this was like not one of the first interactions I had with the one person, but relatively new. So it was difficult to conversate without the formalities. So to just straight up tell like a friend what you think about a situation, or if you experience something, it's going to be a lot more candid. But the information being told with the age discrepancy of like 40 years, and then there's this is a random person I've never met before, and I'm going to tell them like about this sensitive information possibly to myself. It's what I'm going to say is that there's consistent information between both of their stories or both of their accounts about what they heard, about what they saw. And for me, that the conclusion I draw is that whatever they were told from the government, they said it was like a light show or that it was like an air exercise, is not what it was. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I have some information more about the schedule for the podcast coming up here. I have some individuals. Like I said, we have Dom coming in on Friday. Today is November the 19th, the 19th of November. For my Americans, it's November 19th. I would like to have somebody else on today as well. Or not today, but somebody else on tomorrow maybe. So if we have this one today, and this is going to be about aliens and stuff like that. And then we'll have one tomorrow, hopefully. And then on Friday, we'll have one as well. With a special guest on Friday. And I'm hoping actually we can get a special guest tomorrow. So whatever music gets played before, we're actually going to do something totally new now. Before it was just like royalty-free music that I had on an app that I had used. I'd pay for the app and they're like, hey, here's some music. So it's like, okay, sure. Anyway, but now I decided that I'm going to do community music. So anybody that has any type of music, we're going to do a different song for the intro and a different song for the outro. We're maybe going to sample about 10 seconds, so nothing crazy. And there's not really a theme we're looking for. Hopefully it's not something like, I'm not going to pick any music that's like profane or it's like screamo. I like that type of music, I personally. But that doesn't translate necessarily well for what I can consider to be like a newsworthy or educational-ish podcast. So with that in mind, I will take pretty much any type of music. But the trend that I would hope to see is more relaxing or kind of like lo-fi-ish or chill type beats, something like that. Even if it's like upbeat, I can sample it, no problem. It just can't be something that's like way crazy. Like I'll reference something that I think is funny. If somebody wants to make like circus music, right? So I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the Amazing Digital Circus. I personally like a lot of animation studios online. So I watch a lot of YouTube of independent animation studios. They do really cool work. And I think it's a pretty popular show, so a lot of people know about it as well. I think it's on Netflix. And they have like a really funny, like goofy, like outro and intro. That would totally be fine for like one episode. But if we had that like constantly where it was like funky music or like things that were just a little different, I don't know. I'll go with whatever people give me, honestly. And maybe that'll be more fun if it's like, okay, this is just the next on the list. This is episode 17. And so we have to line this up with, okay, we started this on episode 8. This is episode 8 now. So from 17, that'd be 9. So we have like 9 people on there. Okay, if we have like 10 people on the list, what's the 9th on that list? We'll just have to go with it. Which, that might be fun. So we'll have an episode where we talk about some more, a different issue. And it's like, oh, it's, like a meme song or something that's kind of funny. Okay, sure, maybe, I don't know. But then we talk about something that's more like dark. On Friday, we're actually going to speak about men's mental health. And that's why I have my friend coming back on as I made the mistake last time. He's not actually a psychiatrist. He's just a social worker. He's not a doctor. But just as well, he is qualified to give therapy, and he's got a lot of education on that as well. So that'll be exciting. But for that, obviously, if there's going to be like, if I get so much music and it's on the list and I'm like, okay, for episode, let's see if this is 8, then 9, then 10. So episode 10, we're going to do this song. And it's like a super happy, peppy song. I'm going to be, okay, maybe we'll do something that's a little bit more chill just to kind of fit the theme of exactly what we're talking about. Because if I'm going to spend the effort, hopefully it's like a 2-hour podcast. We have a lot of time on Friday, which that'll be good. But hopefully it's not like, something totally off topic, basically. So I'm comfortable with any type of music, basically. I've said basically twice, 3 times. As long as it's not anything like that doesn't fit that day. I'll skip around if need be, but pretty much I want people to just give me any type of music. We'll have a verbal confirmation that says, yes, you can use this music. I'll give you guys a credit. I will shout you guys out in the video. And it'll just be like, music for today is this composer. I certainly like his stuff. Go check it out, 100% for free. Like nothing, I don't expect anything from you guys. I hope you don't really expect too much from me outside of like the free promotion that I'm going to use your music in small part. So if people, I'll put your logo on there as well, anything like that. Just kind of, because I am very pro community and I certainly try to help out a lot of people with their ambitions. So I think it's just good to collaborate with people. I think it would be a good idea. For me in the podcast, I think it'd be fun to have new music every time. And if it was something significant where it's like, hey, that's not just like random music, you can go actually check that person out. They gave me the go ahead to use some of their songs. So if you're feeling comfortable with that, or if you'd like to have your music in any capacity, any person from the internet, if you want to have your music on the podcast, go ahead, leave a comment on this video. You can email me. I think I have some type of contact somewhere. But honestly, just comment on this on this in any form, wherever you find it. Give us a comment. Let us know, hey, this is my YouTube channel. This is my SoundCloud. This is my whatever. I'll check it out. Send us some music. And like I said, it's really just going to be like a 10-second clip, basically, from like, I'll take 2 songs, 10 seconds from the beginning, 10 seconds for the end. With that in mind, I do have a composer. I have a DJ, a friend of mine, honestly. He goes by DreasHipHop. I know him as Andreas. And I think he also goes by DJ Anti-Zero, which is actually kind of cool. Yeah, he's a good guy. He does a lot of good work. He's also a photographer. I actually want to have him on the podcast as well. We could talk about entrepreneurship. So that might be tomorrow because he does a really good job and he's a really ambitious guy. He makes content as well. I'm actually going to talk about him a little bit, maybe. So I'll shout him out as well. DreasHipHop, go check him out. I'll tag his channel as well. I certainly raise hell on his Discord channel, so that'll be funny enough. Regardless, like I said, anybody else wants to have their music, the music that's playing for today is from his channel, or it's from his SoundCloud. I actually got to check out his SoundCloud one album. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm not necessarily somebody who's like a big hip hop fan, or I'm more like, in high school I was more like an emo kid, and I liked like My Chemical Romance, or like my favorite music while I was in high school. My favorite band was System of a Down. And then it was like 3 Days Grace, Slipknot. I loved Korn. Let's see what else. Rise Against was really good. Linkin Park was decent. Because you got to remember, when I was like in elementary school, it was like when Linkin Park was like popular. So all those songs were like playing at our dances constantly. Like I loved Linkin Park. And everybody knew. And then that Transformers movie, oh man, that was best. I was like 3rd grade that came out. It was like 2008 or something like that. What were we even talking about? I'm not sure. But yes, please check out my friend's channel. He's a good guy. Hopefully we can have him on. We can have a nice discussion about some entrepreneurship, considering we're both entrepreneurs. I think I can spell it pretty well as well. On to new business before we get into our interesting discussion. Well, self-proclaimed discussion. I'm just speaking into my phone camera while I sip on today's sponsor, hopefully. Not really. We don't have a sponsor yet. It's still Socks with John, brought to you by Socks with John. Come on, check out Socks with John. I do the exact same videos on YouTube now that I do on TikTok. Reason B, it's good to double dip. I make the same exact content. The last video I made actually did better on YouTube than it did on TikTok, which was kind of funny. But with that in mind, we also have to worry about the TikTok ban. I'm not sure really what's going to happen. It's like, okay, they're going to sell it to an American company, or they're just going to ban it outright. We'll see what happens. I'm not really sure. But I have been told to post it on like Facebook and Instagram as well. So I just posted all over. So get used to seeing the Socks with John videos on the YouTube channel as well. And if you want to check them out on TikTok, I don't think I really ever post exclusive content onto my TikTok that I wouldn't just post onto the YouTube. I think the YouTube gets more love these days. But just as well, if you guys want to check it out, if you want to give me a follow, go for it. It's a Singaporean guy who runs it, not a Chinese person. So I understand the discrepancy of losing your data, but I don't really think that's what's happening. Or if it is, then every single app's doing the exact same thing. So what can you say that Twitter or X isn't doing with your data, or with Facebook's not doing with your data that TikTok would be doing as well? Just as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Socks with John. And I reached out to some other people as well. Hopefully we can get some sponsors for the coffee that I'm drinking. It's mushroom coffee. I'm not going to say the brand because they haven't gotten back to me yet. But as soon as they do, hopefully they become a sponsor and I can shout them out, because the coffee is made with mushrooms and it's actually really good. It helps with my stomach. And it's an interesting taste. I love coffee. And so I couldn't say that this is like the coffee that you would drink if you're like a coffee connoisseur. but it's definitely the type of coffee you would drink if you're having stomach problems and you think that mushrooms are going to be the answer. So far so good, and that's my that's all the consideration I'll give them until they give me a text or until they hit me up. So mysterious mushroom coffee brand that could be anybody. Today's sponsor, not really, but for legal reasons, I have to say that they haven't said nothing. But Stocks with John. Big red cup. So before we get into our topic today, which is aliens, we're going to talk a little bit about my experiences and the people that I met and some other things as well. So just a little bit more prerequisite. It's some primary sources. These are things that happened to me or people spoke directly to me. So either I'm a primary source or I'm a secondary source of, and again, this is a long time ago, so I can't say with certainty exactly the words that they used, but I can paraphrase and I can give you the gist. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, the first conversation. So back to what I was saying before, when I went to Arizona in 2020, it was my ambition to speak to somebody who had been abducted or probed or something, whatever. And I didn't get to find anybody, but I did get to speak to these two people. One of them was named Ron. I don't remember the name of the other lady. They both said a very similar story. I think Ron actually got to see the Phoenix lights, and I think the other lady had heard about them or maybe seen them in part from farther away. So basically what they were saying is that there was these lights in the sky, and they were like, oh, what's going on? And all these, basically like the clouds dissipated, and there was just like all these different colored lights, and they're, kind of like descending. Like they said if the lights in the fog, like the clouds had dissipated to a certain extent, but then there was like this dark fog or like this heavy fog that like raised and lowered, and the lights were like in this like mysterious fog almost. And so people were looking and they're like, what is this? And they thought at first, I think it was like some, military drill or something like that. But then all of a sudden, I think they said, and I got to remember basically, they said they had, like there was some announcement or people were like, what's going on? And they were told, oh, it's a weather balloon or it's like this or that, or it's like a military exercise or something like that. But then they said these jets like flew by, like across the sky, and the lights like, kind of started to dissipate, almost like evaporate. Not like, boom, turn off, like no more light, but like slowly dimmed and like raised and then like dissipated, like basically turned invisible or like turned into nothing. And they were like, oh, there's this or that, whatever he said. So for Ron's example, whatever he said, they said, which is the they, whether it be the people he heard the news from or the radio or the government, whatever the they were in his story, he says that they said it was a weather balloon or it was a military exercise. But he's thinking, if it's a military exercise, everybody's like looking up at this. It was much later that they had those jets go through. So he says to me, he's like, I knew those jets were obviously military, but if it's a military drill, why do they wait so long before we saw anything? And why only send 2 jets through? Or like, however many it was. He says they weren't doing, it's basically a flyby. He's like, that's not a military exercise. And here's the thing. Ron works for an airport. I don't know if he still does. Maybe he does. Maybe he's retired at this point. It's been a while, right? But Ron actually works for an airport. So he would know. He would know the difference between a military exercise and a drill and, surveillance or a flyby. And I thought that was very interesting. And so to me, that was not concrete enough to say that's aliens, but it was certainly something that was not, what the U.S. military at the time, the U.S. government knew of. So if it's like a foreign something, okay, what is it, like China or Russia or whatever it was? So I thought that was very interesting. And the lady kind of, I'll give a more paraphrased version of what she said. Basically, she had just heard it secondhand, and, she didn't agree with anybody, with what they had said. Mind you, I don't know about her account as much. She did like to show me her lighters and her torch collection, and I was thinking like, oh, okay, whatever. And as we're leaving that house, I had a little bit of a conversation with her, my one friend who I was actually there to see why I was in Arizona to begin with. Well, not just to see him. I was on a business trip, but, he was there, so... and what he had said to me was, oh, yeah, you know what those are for? Crack. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, yeah. But, like I said, that's a long time ago, so that's not like the most accurate, and that's not really gonna convince anybody, in my opinion. if you're a very strong-willed person, a stubborn person, or if you're at the very least like a skeptic type of person, that's not going to convince you well enough that there are, extraterrestrial beings. This choppy story from 4 years ago, which really was like 20 years before that. Yeah, that was 1997. So 2 years before I was even born. That basically happened. So now I can tell you about something that happened to me. And this isn't like, oh, I was abducted and they touched me. No. I went out with some friends, or more or less, my mom, my dad, and I, we had met these people, or they knew some people that we were going to go and try to like speak to aliens. And before I have this conversation, we have to talk about an individual who I have high esteem for and I'd like to meet someday. And if you have heard anything about him before, you know what I'm talking about. His name is Dr. Stephen Greer. Dr. Stephen Greer is a basin of information. He's gone through a lot, and I don't want to speak on anything that's not exact information, but through my understanding and through the documentary that I watched, I also follow him on YouTube, and I've heard some other stuff, listened to some podcasts, some other shows he does. Or he's gone on podcasts. I think he's even been with like the Paul brothers, like Jake Paul or Logan Paul, whichever one does the podcast. I think he was on there at one point even. Dr. Stephen Greer. We have some information for you guys from his Wikipedia page that I double checked against other sources. ChatGPT is fantastic because it just gives you like 3 sources when you ask it a question, and then you just kind of go from there. So we have some good stuff here. Basically, Dr. Stephen Greer, I believe now he is 69 years old, according to his Wikipedia page, at least he is. He's the founder of the Center of the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the Disclosure Project, which the Disclosure Project is basically his largest effort so far to disclose the information that he was able to obtain through his work with the government, basically. He co-produced Sirius, documentary from 2013. He crowdfunded Unacknowledged in 2017. He's spoken on multiple different occasions, whether it be for, I believe, some schools he's spoken in front of, or just any panels, UFO panels. A lot of interesting stuff. He's had an opportunity to speak on many different occasions for basically the past 30 years. I think since 2001. Where he kind of, he let his career take off. But I do have on here that his experience and where he got his info is that he briefed Bill Clinton and other members of Congress about UFOs and government secrecy. I think in one of his, and he said this information across a couple different shows, or he's just said this multiple times, that, and he uses like this Bill Clinton voice, his whatever voice that is, that Bill Clinton was upset that he knew that there was information he could not get. He's like, they would not give it to me. He would not give it to me. He knew that there was information that, this different part of the government, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well, of kind of why things are as they are. And it's going to be difficult to talk about it because we don't really have the most concrete sources to base everything off of. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a frivolous conversation with myself here, simply because if we don't have all the information, anything I say is, it could be changed, or it could be, it could be laughable. It could be so wrong that it could be hilarious. But we'll get to the point where hopefully everything we see is along the lines of what we're hoping to privilege you guys with for information-wise. But when it comes down to the exact information or how things are, you got to understand that there are no primary, not necessarily. There are no sources that exist readily available to the American public or to the public in general that we can have our hands on. So I can say, okay, this is a primary source. This is somebody who works in the government, who has seen a UFO, shaken hands with the aliens, played tic-tac-toe, beat them in checkers, all that good stuff. There's no chance I'm going to be having somebody like that on the podcast, unfortunately. So it's just going to have to be enough of this is said by the right people much smarter than I, much more experienced than I, that have gone through things, that have seen things with their own eyes, that we just kind of have to have a remnants of trust. The smallest amount to just say, okay, it's entertaining at the very least if it's not true. But if it is true, it's monumental information. So this is kind of our last step out into the unknown of, yes, a lot of this could be speculative. A lot of this is not 100% true, possibly, or, we can't back it up to the way that we can with the rest of the information we like to share on the show. So it's with that in mind, please understand that if things are found out one day to be untrue or to be wrong, we will, as we have in the past, or if we have to, we will correct ourselves, but we're doing the best we can with the information that's available to the general American public. So with that in mind, one more time, I'll just have to say, this is the moment of trust, and hopefully we can get some truth, right? So we'll start here. I personally have not had any experience with the extraterrestrial, but I've met some people that have said that they have lost time and that they have woken up with bruises and this and that. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And I will tell you about the opportunity I had to go out to the woods at somebody's house, and we all kind of sat in a circle and did some things that were supposed to bring the aliens to us. So the reason that I give the background of Stephen Greer is he kind of explains how things actually work. He is, like I said, somebody I'd like to meet, but he is an incredible basin of not just knowledge, but of temperament, because the way that he's able to say this information is, look, I know that I probably would be shot and killed, or I would be, tortured or whatever. I would be killed in numerous, in fantastical ways by the people that don't want this information out. But he just doesn't care. He's gotten to the point where it's like, I think what he says, it's like a dead hand system, which is if he dies or something happens to him, all the information that he has been willing to withhold from the public, he will no longer. So it's like, okay, and the more you push him, the more he's going to release information that, he's privy to. And, that's absolutely insane. That is just bonkers to me that this person has so much information. Not only is it like, because it's down to specifics at that point. It's like, if you have this information and it's going to be damaging, obviously the people that want it, that don't want it out, are going to want you either dead. And he's given examples of other times where, and this is tough to say on this podcast because we're we want truth above all else. But this is more for entertainment, but this is more so, this is the truth that you just have to either accept or completely disregard and go on with your life without it. But he says that the government basically has the technologies of these alien species. We were able to reverse engineer things to such an extent to which, the capacity of the United States government, or, our technological capacity is far, far beyond what we actually have in mind. Like he says, like hundreds to thousands of years, possibly. In certain regards, tens of thousands of years, he says. Which is, to me, what was 10,000 years ago? So 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago was the Neolithic, what we could say, like the revolution. It's when humans started using stone tools, when they started settling permanently and farming using agriculture instead of hunter-gatherer civilizations. So that's very significant. So 10,000 years ago, we started using tools. Less than 10,000 years ago. So 10,000 years from today, where we have smartphones, which would be pure magic to somebody 10 years ago. And that's I think that's one of the words he uses. I think they say PFM, which is called pure fucking magic. Or like PFMW, which is like the pure fucking magic weapons or something like that. Where it's like, the way that it works is so incomprehensible that you can't even begin to understand how it works. So with that in mind, he has said that, there's people he knows that have, they did something this shadow government doesn't like, basically, or like this, and this is the speculation, right? But the larger portion of the government, or the, what does he say? I think he uses a word similar to like the darker parts of our government. Basically, they did something, and people on his team, they get this lymphatic cancer. And, somebody had never smoked, anything like that. And so he basically thinks that they hit him with like a cancer ray. And that's very crazy to think about. But yeah, when some of the things he speaks on, eventually we have the hearing, and that's something I'll talk about in just a second. But we have these hearings that they expose more and more information. And the thing is, it's when these people sign these contracts that say that, okay, you're not going to speak about this information. And they get in front of Congress and they're asked questions where you have to answer. And they say, I can't answer that. It's like, are there aliens? Yes or no? It's like, I can't answer that. They're not saying no. look at things a little bit differently. Understand that when these people are getting asked these questions, they're not responding with, no, there's no aliens, or no, there's not this or that. It's, I can't speak about that. I signed something. Okay, that sounds like a yes to me. So it's with that in mind, I can tell this story a little bit. So enough background. We went to, my mom, my dad, and I. We went out to this person's house with a couple other women, and I think it was just like 3 or 4 other women. And it was interesting. We all sat in a circle, and they had told me about some instances where they lost time. But here's the problem. And this is like deep. Basically, since World War II, the end of World War II, we confiscated all the Nazis, scientists, the American government. They say we. I didn't do anything. It wasn't. But the American government confiscated basically all of the Nazi scientific development research into UFOs. I think, I can't give like a specific year, but I think in one of the, whether it be this year or last year, in one of the UFO hearings, somebody had actually said that we've known that there's the U.S. government, as in they know, that there's been aliens on this planet at least since the mid 1940s and 50s. That is absolutely crazy, because that's a hot time in the world history. So that, and from the hearing that they had more recently, they said that the aliens are in the ocean, right? They're in the ocean. Yeah. Why would they be in the ocean? Well, we have nuclear capable submarines that hold a lot of our nuclear, the American nuclear capability. Why not? From what I've heard, from what I've seen so far, it's basically everything is revolving around the nuclear or development of nuclear weapons. And the reason that's such a big deal is it was once we synthesized the atom bomb. The alien population, and this is from the perspective of, me, I'm watching this documentary, this is the language that they're using, basically. The aliens understood that we finally created something that would destroy ourselves. Yeah, we can create bombs and gunpowder and this or that, but it takes a lot of gunpowder to equate to what a nuclear bomb would do. It does not take as much material at all. Basically, we have the capability to harm the aliens with nuclear bombs. I'm not going to say that, there's like significant damage we could do to them, but with a nuclear bomb, splitting the atom, hydrogen bombs, it's a big deal. So it's with that the understanding that the aliens, or whichever aliens, whatever they are, started watching us a little closer. And because, like I said, we're kind of in a interesting time in history now, with a lot of war breaking out and things are escalating to the point where we can possibly expect in the next 10 years that there'll be a larger global conflict. The aliens at this point might understand that, okay, in 1945, one country had nukes. Okay, in 2024, how many countries have nukes? All the countries in the world that have nukes: the United States, Russia, China, United Kingdom, France, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. So that is 9 countries. And like I said, there are multiple different countries that could have nuclear capabilities, but simply have not. Those being like Iran and Ukraine, among many other countries. I'm sure Germany would love to have nukes, but they know that'd be probably not a good idea. Regardless, 10 countries on the planet, basically, and a lot more if they wanted. So 9 countries on the planet currently. It could be a lot more if we actually get into a nuclear conflict. That could be a bad deal. Anyway, back to the story of me in the woods with these people. In this house, not just like in the random woods. We were supposed to be outside, but it was raining, so that was too bad. I was actually pretty disappointed, and I'll tell you why. So I asked this one lady, about her experience, and she had told me about a time she woke up with bruises. And the reason that I've kind of skated around this for the 3rd time now, it's that the United States government got this technology basically and developed its own UFOs. And the reason that it does that is so, one, it could basically run a fear campaign so that people that do get abducted are basically tortured by these aliens, basically robots or people that are dressed up in suits or whatever, to imitate the aliens, to make sure that people don't want to get closer, that they don't want more information, they don't want to reach out to real aliens or whatever it is. So that's where we're at. It's it's so far down the line that it's not even, okay, these are real aliens. Or the United States government has this technology to which they know how to hide it so well that they've run a fear campaign of dressing up like the real aliens with the technology they have to abduct people and then, basically torture them, like I said. So here's the thing. What Stephen Greer says is that the aliens have no malice in, whatever, the capacity of their being or their heart. They don't want to hurt people. They have no reason to. If they were going to hurt or kill us, they could have done it millions, billions of times over in much harsher ways than just plucking us off the ground and taking us up into the sky, right? So it's with that in mind that it's like, okay, why do they want to be here at all? And that's where I want to kind of find out as well through firsthand experience. To the aliens out there that are watching or listening in, I would be absolutely terrified, but I would like to have a meeting. We'll have some conversation, and I hope that you can share with me what you can. And this is not like an effort to expose you guys or to put anything in jeopardy or to endanger anybody or anything. It's more so I think it would be really interesting, and I think my trajectory in life, it would be important for me to have an experience like that, and I think we could kind of work together maybe. I don't know, that'd be interesting, right? But I don't know, the likelihood of that happening, it didn't happen when I was out in the woods, I'll tell you that. So we were at this house, and that's what I told the lady is, hey, by the way, it was probably not a real, like, alien craft or whatever that picked you up. You say, like, you woke up with bruises, you don't remember what happened, yada, yada. That's more indicative of, one of the fake aliens. And that's a loony conversation to start with, Like, right out of the gates, it's like, oh, those aren't the real aliens. It's like, what? Are there are real aliens? Yeah, those aren't the real ones, though. That's crazy. So here's the thing. We all sat down in the circle. We all got like a crystal or like a ball or something. I don't know, just a fidget toy basically. And the lady that was leading us, it was her house. She said, "Oh, we've done this plenty of times." And she goes, "On occasion, I'll channel a being that goes by the name of Geppetta." And I was like, "Whoa, okay, let's see how that does." So basically, what we did is we kind of just all sat in the circle. It's like in the middle of nowhere, and the lights are off, but there's like candles going, and it felt like a seance, man. And she starts like just saying some words, try to put us in this meditative state. I was like, my eyes are not opening until I see an alien or something. But it was like, okay, let's see what happens. So I'm rocking back and forth. I'm really trying to get into the mode. I'm like, really trying to get this out-of-body experience and everything. And then like she switches over her voice and she starts talking in a way that's like just different. And I think that was her, whether she was like faking it or not, which I don't really think she was faking, or she was being truthful. I think she was faking it maybe just for our enjoyment. But she was saying some weird things that were in a weird tone of voice, and it was just like, okay, maybe this is real. I highly doubt it. I don't think it was. And then at the end, we got to speak a little bit about what we saw, if we saw anything, and people were like, oh man, it's like this and that, and once you started saying this, I felt this way, and whatever. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I didn't see anything. I didn't feel anything, and I was disappointed. So when she got to me, I said a little bit, and I said thus. Basically, I was here to experience a lot of overwhelming feelings, but unfortunately the feeling that I'm having to deal with now is disappointment. I believe that's what I said pretty much. They're like, oh, it's okay. Something doesn't happen every time. We really should have been outside and this and that. And I was like, yeah. And the thing I was so disappointed is that my mom was very excited for this because she thought I would feel happy from this. As somebody who deals with depression a lot, and my mood is a big issue. Being bipolar is a really shitty deal, but so she wanted me to do something nice, and I thought this was going to be exciting. And I don't know what I expected really, but I got nothing, so it was too bad. So it was after that I was a little dampened. I was like, well, if there's real aliens, am I ever going to see them? I don't know. But I wanted to learn more, and I really wanted to have my own experience. So we'll see what happens. On my birthday, maybe I'll do something. But the way that the way that Dr. Stephen Greer, I'll just say Dr. Greer from now on, the way that he suggests that we can get in contact is he actually takes people on these retreats. I think he's down in North Carolina. He does this where he'll go out and everybody has to be a certain way. And what I mean by that is he says that there's different forms of consciousness, or that there's an elevated level. They call it like the God consciousness, where it's like the next level of consciousness. He said this is basically how they use their technologies, or this is how their communications work. And some of it's like really like off the walls. Like one of the things he said, and I'm not sure this is true, this would be absolutely terrifying if it was. Basically, he says that anything that is conscious, they can spy on that consciousness by looking through it. Basically, they can see what your eyes see. And that means that privacy has completely disappeared forever. There's nothing we can do. You can't hide something. You can't write a letter and put it somewhere. You'd basically have to not look at it. You'd have to blind yourself. And that's if they can see through your eyes in that regard. If that's a real thing, that is absolutely terrifying, because that is truly the end of all privacy. If they can see through your eyes by spying on your consciousness, by whatever means. He said that all consciousness is through singularity. It's all one. We're all just different versions of the same, we're all different experiences of the same consciousness. It's one consciousness in this entire universe, which is basically having everybody experience it in their own way. So when you start thinking of things like that, it's like, okay, why ever suffer? Why commit suffering, or proliferate suffering, or whatever? Why be a bad person if we're all like the same? It really throws you for a loop if you start to believe in a certain way. And that's why it's similar in my mind, or it's adjacent to how people consider things in religion, because it's like, we are all one thing, and this is where we all come from, and maybe there is an afterlife or an exception to death or whatever. And that's difficult to fantasize, or that's easy to fantasize, but it's difficult to actualize, because if it's like, okay, a religion, you can say when we die, we go to heaven, we get eternal life and whatever, we feel good, we're happy, it's heaven. Heaven in our minds has been an idea for so long. You even use it, I'm not a religious person, but I still say things like, oh my God, or oh, that's like heaven, because it's a word to us nowadays, that we think of heaven as a really good place, the perfect place, the best place ever, where you'd like to be if you didn't want to miss your family or, people you love. So it's with that in mind that it's similar to how one would think that was in a religion. And so it's with that in mind as well that I'm skeptic of this information, and you should be too. And I'm surprised, honestly. I had a conversation with myself. Basically, I was like, okay, you can't really have a formative conversation about this based on the principles of your podcast, because it is supposed to be purely based in fact that you can, look over multiple different times and correct yourself if need be on different occasions or whatever else. Like, you can find this information, you can make sure it's suitable, and you can create something based on that concrete fact of what it is. There's so much speculation wrapped up in this conversation. There's so much, you just have to believe in what I'm saying, because I had to believe what it was being told, because we don't have the whole picture yet. And I worry we won't have the whole picture for a very long time, whether it be 25 years or 35, 45, 50 years, who knows? In my lifetime, I'm hoping that we find, or, it's released to us at the very least, the evidence of aliens, like the true hard, like here's a actual living, breathing, speaking, if that's how they work, alien or something like that. That's basically what it would take to convince me. But especially with the current administration and with the next administration, even more exceptionally, I would say that it's very unlikely that we're going to see a releasing of this information. We'll have to find out really what's going to happen. But I don't see this coming to light for a very long time. So this is the best I can do, like I said, with the information that's been given to me or that I've heard. I can suggest that if anybody wants to hear from somebody a lot more intelligent than me and has a lot more information about this specific subject, go check out the podcast. Or sorry, not the podcast. Go check out the documentaries. There's the Sirius, SIRIUS, the documentary from 2013, and then there's Unacknowledged. I'm pretty sure that's the one I saw, the Unacknowledged, in 2017. I didn't see it in 2017, but I think it's on Netflix. I would check those out. And then he actually also spoke, which I think I saw it as well, which is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Contact Has Begun. I want to tell you, if you have any type of information about this specific subject, if you have an experience you'd like to share, I would love, absolutely love, to pick your brain about it, or just to speak to you at all. Go ahead and comment on this video. I know a lot of people, this is going to get some attention from maybe some wackos. Why not? Bring on the wackos. We're here for them. And we can talk about this more in depth. But we will definitely hit a wall of like, okay, you know, we'll hit a wall in the way of like uncharted territory is beyond this wall, but it's like Looney Tunes. You know, we don't need to get to and that's why every time you go to the store and buy milk, it's not real milk. It's like, oh, okay, we're going too far. This is about the credible information from the people that have been working on these basically secret projects. You know, Dr. Greer had the opportunity to actually go into these, they call them deep underground, what are they called? DUMBs? Deep underground bases. What's the M? Military base, I guess. Deep underground military base. Basically says you can hit it with a tactical nuke and nothing would happen on the top. Like, you know, that's that type of secrets, you know, shit's going down on the inside of there. So I would absolutely love if I could have Dr. Greer on. So he could give us some information from his firsthand account, because that's kind of the whole premise of this podcast. So in any regard, if we're actually able to do that, if I'm able to have him on this podcast, we would love that. There's not so much else I really have for you guys today. I kind of just really touched the surface on some of this information. If you guys want to get deeper into it, I can have another conversation, hopefully with somebody on, and we can kind of go over what the significance of this information actually reveals. Because it's not just about what is said, it's the conclusions you draw from what is said. And that's where it starts to get into okay, how can you confirm this information? And is it worth it to do that to begin with? Because if what you're doing is taking information that maybe is right and then spending a lot of time trying to figure out the next portion or where to go from there based on that information, if you don't even know that it's 100% correct, all that work you're doing could be for naught. And you don't want to waste time like that. That's not a very conductive way. It's not an efficient way to do work. And that's not it's not how you conduct business, I suppose. It's not a good way of doing things. But opposed to our principalities on this podcast, we did share some information that's not 100%. We don't have like a strong factual basis for this information outside of accounts from multiple people that line up pretty goddamn well. So it's with that in mind, this is the best we could do, pretty much. A lot of this information has been repeated many, 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 many times. I'm going to link to the documentaries if you guys want to check them out. Like I said, it's probably a good idea. It's put a lot better than I was able to put things today. But today's episode was more so just to kind of share my experience and my ambition to actually get in touch with some people, and so I can gather some more information about this. And maybe at some point I could even have the big man himself on this podcast. That would be pretty cool, especially because I feel like we align on a lot of ideological issues as far as our consideration for information and our upheaval of the entire government system, or at least our future endeavor to. We'll get there someday, I'm sure. But regardless, please everybody go check out Dreas, Dreas, on SoundCloud. I think he's got some other things as well. He does a lot. He makes YouTube videos, makes TikTok videos on occasion. I think, like I said, I really want to have him on, but he's going to be the intro and outro. That should be playing, honestly, right now. But thank you, everybody who stuck around to watch this video for today. I know it's kind of like all over the place, and we didn't really have a concrete idea or really solid information to give you guys outside of just like the speculation from a couple people and my personal experiences. But hey, sometimes you just got to put a little bit of trust in, you know, if it turns out that all of this is Haktua, this is all just junk, then, you know, not much I can do besides just say in the future that, hey, I did my best. But like I said, as always, we're trying to get our new sponsors in. So for right now, brought to you by Stocks with John, as always. Please check out Dreas. His music is pretty good. I do enjoy the stuff. That's going to be all from us today, guys. Once again, I am John, host of the In Morning Out podcast, and I will see you again very, very soon. Take care. Adios, mis muchachos. Until the next one. Peace out, guys. Peace out. Peace out. Gotta make a bomb, but you don't wanna make out. Extra details, gotta break down the layout. Careful bracelet, got them turning faces. Getting out. Ow. Now, how does the outfit? Confident in your walk, what a challenge. Get it how you want, what a savage. Show them how you own it, that business. What a figure worth more.